Good morning and good evening to those watching in Europe and beyond. Thank you so much for continuing to stay with us. We will continue to our last panel. This is a Patrons of Peace panel led by Marion Ryan Soroff. Marion is a valued member of the team here, a leader of the Peace Train, as well as the Peace Pledge movements. So without further ado, Marion, let's start this off.
Thank you so much, dear Anand, and thank you so much to you and to the entire team at Davos Worldwide for this phenomenal platform for all of us to share our wisdom as leaders in a multitude of different areas and all focused on making the world a better place. So I'm very happy and grateful to be here today, and always happy and grateful to collaborate with Davos Worldwide, as it is truly a great honor and delight. Thank you so much. And very, very grateful to be joined today by a group of extraordinary female leaders leading in the space of philanthropy, of wealth stewardship, and in the family office space that are all focused on creating legacies that honor our families and also create legacies of peace, prosperity, and thriving for all for future generations. So we are here with the Patrons of Peace panel. We are focused on the conscious stewardship of wealth through philanthropy and shared values to make the world a better place through peace, prosperity, and purpose. So I wrote a little opening script. So if you would please allow me to share this, because I feel like it's a great frame for this amazing panel. And on a personal note, I'm so grateful for everyone for showing up for this. This panel is an incredible group of sheroes who are my personal sheroes in a multitude of different ways. And so I'm so grateful for everyone for showing up for this panel and for our shared mission and purpose of making the world a better, more peaceful and prosperous place for everyone. So thank you so much. Aloha and welcome, everyone. It is an honor to gather with you today for this Patrons of Peace conversation. We are deeply grateful to be joined by leaders of families, foundations, and institutions who understand that this moment in history is calling not just for generosity, but for stewardship. Today, we honor a phenomenal group of female leaders whose work spans philanthropy, finance, family offices, and global peace building. Each of them represents a different pathway, yet all share a common commitment, utilizing wealth, influence, and leadership to serve something greater than themselves. The idea of Patrons of Peace is rooted in a timeless truth. Throughout history, it has been patrons, individuals and families with vision and courage, who have funded art, culture, education, and movements that shaped civilization, truly the things that bring us all together in our shared humanity. Today, we are being invited to become patrons not only of beauty and progress, but of peace and prosperity itself. This panel is about how conscious wealth and philanthropy can move beyond charity into legacy, creating infrastructure for peace, prosperity, and human flourishing that endures across generations. Our intention today is simple and powerful: to explore how peace can be funded, stewarded, and scaled, and how each of us can play a role in shaping a future where prosperity and purpose rise together. With that, I'm honored to begin this conversation with our extraordinary panelists. You are all invited to introduce yourselves and your professional roles and focus, and very importantly, your why for doing what you are doing. Grateful for you all for being here and shining a light on this important topic by sharing your wisdom and leadership with this global audience. Mahalo. So if we would please begin with perhaps whoever feels called to begin, perhaps with Blue, my very, very dear friend of many years. Thank you so much for being here.
It's very kind, Marin, and it's such an honor to be here today with everyone. So thank you for the opportunity. My background is I'm 37 years in the nonprofit sector side, both national and international. I've been with organizations such as Save the Children, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and other organizations serving within different ecosystems focused on conversations such as education, humanitarian work, healthcare, and other. In the last 10 years or so, I've been asked to really step in for the nonprofit sector to focus on new topics coming to the sector to make sure that we are paying attention, that we know how to have the conversations that people want to have with regards to impact, and that we are aligning those conversations. Um, and then the last thing I'll say is and it'll be talked about, I'm sure today, is this big transfer of wealth that a lot of advisors are talking about. And with that being said, from a nonprofit perspective, we need to be able to understand what that looks like and to be able to show up properly. So we have next gen leaders that are coming forward, and they have a way that they want to make an impact in this world. We have women who are building, are in charge of wealth. What does that look like? How do we help that conversation? So my why on why I've been in this field for so long is because I know that collectively, like when we come together, basically bring our superpowers together, there's an opportunity to make huge impact in the world. And I want to leave this world a better place for my kids and for, the generations that come to be. So awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Blue. I'm so grateful for you and your leadership in the world and grateful for you being here. Thank you. And I'm next, excuse me, I'm so excited to hear from Noelle Pacaro Brown. And also, just on a personal note, I'm so grateful for Blue for the introduction with Noelle. And I saw a LinkedIn post with the two of them shining together, and it was so beautiful. And I immediately commented on their beauty and as shining leaders in a multitude of spaces. And so I'm so grateful for Blue for the introduction with Noelle, and Noelle, so grateful for you and your amazing work. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Maren, and thank you, Blue. Thank you to this entire group. I feel like I want to get to know all of you, and this conversation is a beautiful place to start. My name's Noelle Pacaro Brown, and I lead the Conscious Wealth Management Group at Morgan Stanley. Our team has been doing this work for over 40 years. It began with my mother. So, the why for me is really legacy and carrying on the great work that she began in 1983 when I was 3 years old. And it's really evolved over this time. And so we really are a model for what that evolution can look like. Blue, when you talk about women stepping into leadership and the next generation of leaders, like we're embodying that in the wealth management industry. And so, our latest white paper was on the evolution of advice and how wealth managers need to consider themselves as generational wealth managers. And what does that mean? And so this conversation is absolutely core to who we are. Thank you for inviting us in. We are a wealth management team that works with families, founders, and foundations, and obviously mission alignment and values amplification through capital flow is exactly where we want to be. So this is a beautiful conversation I'm excited to be part of. I can't wait to meet Stephanie. My mother and father have been a part of Rotary for like over a decade. And Adi, I've learned about your multi-generational family. So I feel like we're amongst friends here. This is going to be a really fun conversation. Thanks for inviting me in, Mine.
Oh, my honor and pleasure, Noelle. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your stewardship in this space and beyond. I'm so grateful for you, and so beautiful that this is also your family legacy. It's very, very special. Love that about your mother and your why. Thank you for sharing. And with that, I would love to invite my dear friend Adi Susan this beautiful dovetail as well, and so grateful for Adi and her amazing work in the space with stewardship and family legacy. Thank you so much, Adi.
Yeah, thank you for having me. As some of you know, my family's been investing in real estate in the US for 5 generations, and we have been active in Rotary for 3 generations. Yeah. Let's see, my grandfather was a past international director. There's since I think starting at the age of 6, my family, you're expected once a month to go to some sort of Rotary service project. I didn't understand that it wasn't normal to volunteer, either painting or planting a tree or feeding the homeless every month until I went to college and I was like, wait, you don't do Rotary projects once a month? What is your family doing? So I think Rotary is absolutely an amazing, amazing organization to get involved with, not just as parents, grandparents, it's also for children. I think it's had a profound effect on the careers and the professional development and developing at a human level for not only myself, but also my brother and my sister as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Adi. So grateful for you, and also so grateful for your warm introduction and all the amazing convening work that you've been doing for the past week around our very special guest of honor and her visiting South Florida. We're so honored and grateful that she was here with us in South Florida, and and I'm so grateful that I was able to meet Dr. Yurchik, Dr. Stephanie Yurchik, and learn about some of her wisdom as the former president of Rotary International, global superstar, and now chairwoman of the Rotary Foundation. I'm so grateful for you, Dr. Yurchik, for your leadership, and shining a light and being one of the best peace leaders I could ever imagine. It's just an honor and a joy for you to join us, and thank you so much for being here. Please, if you would share about your role, and also I'm so curious for your why as well, and thank you for being here.
Well, of course, and thank you, Maren. What a beautiful introduction. I appreciate that. I am an active Rotarian, and I've been an active Rotarian for 34 years. And you've heard a couple of the panelists already mention Rotary. Rotary is an international membership organization that does humanitarian service. And we do that through the lens of 7 areas of focus. And those focus areas all fall from the UN Sustainability Goals. So everything that we do in Rotary is meant to help move us to a more peaceful world. We create the environments that are necessary for peace to flourish. My why is really simple. I have always seen Rotary as an arm of a big organization that allows me to give back. When I think about growing up, my childhood, what privileges I had. I was able to go to school, and I was, able to do things that, I had health, I had happiness, and that so many of those things are missing in the world. So Rotary allows me to work with individuals and families, children, and help in a way to provide the service that helps them get what they need. So that's a very simple why for me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yurchik, and thank you for sharing that, because that really is one of the, I feel like, is a why that guides all of us as well, because there is so much that need in the world, and there is so much that we can do from individually and also collectively, and Rotary is certainly the beacon shining example of peace infrastructure, and how by creating the infrastructure and community of Rotarians around the world and all of the different clubs. I hadn't really learned that much about the Rotary Club before Adi introduced me, and I heard your amazing talk at the gala that was honoring you this past weekend. And I'm just blown away by the depth, and also the integral layers of how this peace infrastructure has flourished around the world for over 100 years. So I'm so grateful for you, and also share that why as well. With what I'm doing in the world, and the reason why we are convening today as patrons of peace, to share about peace infrastructure. So that's and I feel that one of the questions that to ask was, why are we doing this? Like, why are we convening today, and why is this the most important topic in the world? And if everyone could, as everyone did share a bit about that. So if we could perhaps expand on that to say, what are, from everyone's perspective, what are several focus areas that of why and how private philanthropy can help with peace building and also with prosperity building, and we're all embodied in all of these areas. So just a quick round all around. Perhaps whoever feels called to speak first.
I could talk about how we're using it with real estate investing.
Yes, please. Thank
Okay,
you.
so a very simple real estate investment strategy. A lot of people love to buy multifamily, right? Now, if you take a multifamily property that's in a high crime rate area and you give $25,000 to $30,000 to the local police force to get a canine unit, and then you tell them, hey, you can train your canine unit at our building, and then you spend a couple $100 getting a coffee machine, and you put it in a lobby, and you tell the police, hey, anytime you want coffee, you can come here and you can get coffee for free 24/7 in our lobby. It decreases, and then you put lighting in around the building. It decreases the crime rate, not just of the building you bought, but of the 8 buildings that are surrounding it. Now, the canine units usually have drug sniffing dogs as well. So do you think the drug dealers move out of that building pretty quick? So the people who live in that building no longer have to worry about drug dealers being in their building. They no longer have to worry about their children being a neighbor of a drug dealer. They no longer have to worry about their children having a neighbor who's armed because they don't want the drugs that are in their apartment being stolen. You are decreasing the crime rate massively, and all you did was bought a multifamily building that you were going to buy anyways, and you spent $30,000 investing in the police force being more well equipped, and you decreased the crime rate. You made them feel safe, so you increased the retention for your property. So people aren't living there 1 to 3 years. They're living there 7 years or longer, sometimes decades. So that is one amazing example of, I think, of how real estate investors can just shift where they're buying their properties. And not only can they still get an amazing return on their investment, but they can bring peace at a local level, zip code by zip code.
Adi, thank you for that example. I think one thing that I want to highlight is just really focusing on the needs of the community in which you're investing in. Like, what are the realities? Who lives there? You want families there? What are some of the ways we can listen to the community in order to support them in what can be such low cost ways? And there's so many examples. I mean, for you with real estate, that's one example. For corporations, when we're moving capital flow in their direction, what does it mean to really have that level of compassion with not just your consumer, but the folks that you're doing business with, the communities that surround, and really thinking through all stakeholders, including not just the people, but the surrounding resources and environment, right? So when we talk about conscious wealth and conscious capital flow, it goes beyond the transaction, as you mentioned, and really thinking through this community and the people around it, the place, in order to really think through the investment, not in the first year, not in a quarter, but really stretching that period of time. Because Maren, one of the things that you brought up was this idea around generational legacy in our discussions. And generational outcomes don't happen in quarters or even 1 year. So we have to stretch that time frame and really seek the relationship that then builds trust in order for those outcomes to play out, not just over our lifetime, but our futures too. So I just appreciate this conversation of thinking through the relationships involved, the time frame, also the trust that becomes established, because those to me, connection, time, and trust, those are the components of peace, right? And so we have this capacity in our capital flow to demonstrate this in our transactions, which tend to be very cold and don't offer that level of relationship unless we insist on it, right? So I love your example because it highlights in real time how your family's been able to kind of think through the realities of the communities that you're investing in. And I think there's so many other examples. So maybe I'd pass it to someone else who wants to pitch in.
Sure. You know, it's not a secret that we find ourselves in an era of declining government support for humanitarian things, and that's globally. That's not just in the US, it's globally. And you know, the private sector has responded in the past in meaningful ways in certain areas. In healthcare and education, you know, grateful alumni donate and buildings are named, or, you know, a wing of a hospital is named. So there's been support all along. But I think looking at the humanitarian organizations that exist, like Rotary, is another way for the private sector to reach out and support the sustainability goals that we're all looking at, because we want the world to be a better place. You know, as Blue said, we want to leave the world in better shape than we found it. You know, one of the programs that comes to mind for me, we have a very strong program in Rotary called Peace Fellowships, because we have Rotary Peace Centers around the globe. We have 7 of them. Our most recent Peace Center, they're located at major universities, and it's a collaboration between Rotary and that university. And we create a master's program or a certificate program in peace and conflict resolution. And the programs are based on positive peace, not negative peace. So we're talking about all those aspects that are necessary for a community or society to thrive: justice, equity, you know, all those norms. And our last Peace Center, which was our first in the Middle East, was started by a very generous donation from the Fran and Walter Otto Foundation, because that couple, as when they were living, believed so much in the power of positive peace building. So their gift of $15 million helped us to establish our Peace Center in the Middle East. So we are very interested in continuing that program. We have 1,826 young people who have finished programs at one of the Peace Centers, and they're all over the globe now, working in communities and helping to establish what's necessary for peace to thrive. So that's just one example that comes to mind for me of how the private sector can engage with organizations like Rotary to help promote peace building in the world.
And they all call Stephanie the Queen Mother. So if you want
No, they,
18,000 young people to mobilize and help with your project, you contact the Queen Mother.
uh,
Wow, that's absolutely incredible, and it is truly organization Rotary and the organization around peace building is truly it's unparalleled. The amount of time and energy in the global community. How many Rotarians are there around the world?
there's roughly 1.2 million Rotarians, but we also have other levels of Rotary. We have a group of young people aged 18 to 30 that are called Rotaractors. They're not represented in that number. Then we have high school students called Interactors. They aren't represented in that number. And in many countries, we now have something called Early Act, elementary school. They're not represented. So there's so many hands doing the work of Rotary. It's really, really amazing.
Absolutely. And I'm so excited for more storytelling around this as well, because I'm in the peace space, and I've of course heard of Rotary International and just super stellar reputation on so many levels, and also dear friends that are members, and also I listening to your talk, I was so in awe and inspired by by the infrastructure and also the spirit of Rotarians and the collaborative giving spirit. And it was such a beautiful family vibe. And I love that there are Rotary stations and centers all over the world, and that people are gathering all over the world on a weekly basis. It's
Oh,
incredibly beautiful on so many levels. So I'm just very, very in awe of the work that you do, and excited for to hear from more of the Rotarians like on the grounds that are on the storytelling around this, because I truly think that this is going to be majorly inspiring for people all over the world, and I'm so inspired on so many levels. So
Oh, thank you, Maren.
of
what's
course.
incredible is we'll have capital that we want to allocate to these, like to solving the food crisis. We don't have the contacts for it or the infrastructure. And when you're donating, you don't know if it's actually going to that cause. And so we're sitting there on the patio speaking about this with the foreign minister and someone who works with all the sovereign wealth funds. And Stephanie was like, well, I know the prime minister's in 200 countries. What do we need to make sure that the donations and the investments get where they need to go? Like, she knows, she has the infrastructure for when you want to bring about these life-saving innovations and development projects. In one phone call, she can make sure it's in the right place and it has the right people overseeing it, so that it's not $300 million is lost. It's $300 million actually goes towards building out the infrastructure supply chain for food to get to the places it needs to go.
One of the things we're most proud about in Rotary is our ability to steward the funds and the people when anybody makes a contribution or an investment in Rotary. We are telling them and making sure that what they want their investment to do is exactly what it will do. I don't know if all of you are familiar with the instrument called Charity Navigator. It's a professional app that rates foundations, and our Rotary Foundation, for 17 years in a row, has received the top rating, 4-star rating from Charity Navigator. So that's what makes me so proud of working with our Rotary Foundation, is that we do what we say we're going to do and we follow up on it.
That's so important in the philanthropic sector, and as a family and as a philanthropist who has been giving for many years to the causes our family very much cares about, including peace building, the transparency and knowing that our donation is going to good use and is going directly to create the impact that is desired on the ground and to solve these pressing global challenges is the most important thing for us as a family. So we're so grateful for you for creating that infrastructure and also the transparency around the giving and the impact that's created. And so with that as well, I'm interested to hear from Blue about regarding the impact and also distinguishing between conscious philanthropy and traditional giving. Your career has been in leadership of some of the most major global institutions in the world, Save the Children and St. Jude's. How do you distinguish between what's actually making an impact? And also Stephanie beautifully spoke about this in her speech as well, so I'd love to hear from her about this next. But how do you distinguish between if you're making an actual impact or if it's traditional giving, and how can I be a conscious philanthropist with my giving, from your perspective as a leader in the space?
Thank you, Maren, for that question. So I think a couple of things. One is historically, the nonprofit sector has, I would say, built a great muscle around traditional giving tools. We in some respect that's been a navigation by donors. So the concept has been to, it's leaned more transactional with good intent to be reactive to situations at hand, missions that need to be met is then relief oriented, right? Because we have humanitarian issues that need people to step up. And so generally that means deploying dollars, meals, services, shelters, and and making an impact. So that's all been great. I think the question that you ask about conscious philanthropy, what's different about that and why is that important? I think it helps us to go, to that next level of really looking at systems awareness and looking at what kind of questions do we need to think about? Like, who defines the problem? Who holds the decision-making power? What conditions must change for this issue to stop reoccurring? So it aligns capital with long-term outcomes, which is where we all want to get to, right? We want to solve problems. And it helps with regards to the question that we're working on, and we think about the SDGs. It's not only impact, but it's durability. How can we get to that North Star goal in a way that creates long-term change? So I would say that's the difference between the two. And I feel like we have a lot of leaders who are, asking these questions, asking really good questions. I think generationally that's being discussed. And I do think that, we need to elevate this conversation more because we have big issues in the world. We also have a movement of funding, and we need to figure out how do we best use our superpowers, right, to solve the issues at hand together.
Man, may I jump in?
Absolutely. And thank you, Blue. Absolutely, completely agree. Yes, please.
Blue, I love what you're saying about kind of leveling up in terms of the way we think about the allocation of capital, because I think that oftentimes the way that we create wealth has been separate from the way that we give wealth. And yet, the way that we give can't always be solving for what happens when we create wealth in the wrong way that does create these global crises, whether they're climate, whether they affect, human civilization in the way that we have these scarcity of resources. So I think that there is this greater consciousness that it's not just the 5% give, but it's the whole 95% as well, that wealth is steward that needs to be addressed. And so, conscious philanthropy to us is really just an arc and an expression of conscious wealth, which says and acknowledges that as wealth holders, we acknowledge that there are limits to resources on this planet. Just as the SDGs say, there's limits to resources. There is a wealth disparity, right? I mean, we just have to acknowledge that exists. And then wealth holders do have some level of responsibility in addressing, and each family has their own flavor. I love the way that we see this next generation really stepping into their leadership, acknowledging and honoring all the work that's been done over the last generations, but then saying, what does the world need now? I am the leader now to acknowledge what's going on in the world and then apply, our family values, but in an expression that actually meets the need in this moment. And so what I love about this conversation is that we're not saying it's make money then give. It's all very integrated, and it's flow of capital. And we're looking at a risk spectrum that says that philanthropy is the ultimate risk spectrum. We're willing to try new things. We're willing to give with organizations that we trust and respect, who've been doing great work for so many years. And that's really where we can be bold and seek new ideas. And then all of the private industry that follows also should live with those same values, or at least be with that intention, so that we're not trying to create solutions while there's issues happening as we're maintaining and creating wealth. So this concept around conscious wealth, which is one that we've been really centered on over the last few decades, is really coming to light now. And I'm just so excited, like you said, Blue, that we have this opportunity to raise the volume on the conversation, come together, in our philanthropic partnerships, and also the way that we flow capital and investment, Adi, with you and your family talking about specifically examples of how you're doing this work. And I love that we're working together on this. And so that's why I wanted to step in and mention that.
I think to your point, for those of us who grew up in the era of social media, it's no longer investment or doing good. If you want to play long term in any sector today, you do not want that PR headline of you killing ducks in what is it, the Gulf of Mexico. Like you have to pick investments that are going to have a positive impact on the local population. Like that's just good business sense today. So something that for a while we called it impact investment, and now we just call it best business practice.
Yes, it is just the way you need to invest, right? For it to be a good investment. Thank you for calling that out, Adi.
And impact is the word that's crucial because for too long, people focused on what are the inputs and the outputs and then maybe the outcome, but it's really impact that we're looking for. And that encompasses a couple of things. It certainly means that up front, you have to do assessments, community assessments and measurements and figure out where you're starting. And then, employ the things that you're going to do project wise. And you have to measure then to make sure that you get to the impact. Impact statements are what build trust. They're what people are looking for. They want to make sure that this is exactly what I want to invest in. So that's a really important word today.
Well, and to your point, Adi, Stephanie, that's a good investment too. So in private investments, private companies and public companies, their durability. I love what you said, Blue, about durability. Their durability in whatever era we're in. We have so much going on in the world right now, but their reason to remain relevant is because not only are they growing, but they are doing it in a way that provides impact. So their relevance is maintained. Their fanfare is maintained. We see this between different retailers, how certain folks are now like leaning in one direction or the other because of the way that certain corporations are responding to the events of the day, to the news, to the things that are going on like in our neighborhoods. And so it's no longer allowed. It can't be separate, as Adi said, because it's so public. It's in the social media, it's in the news. So I think where one of the questions, Marin, that you mentioned is how should advisors, like how should we all, as we're counseling our clients, right, be thinking through how to keep them safe? And I think it is with this level of consciousness and recognition, not to just see quarter to quarter, but think, what are the long-term effects? Who and what would be affected by the decisions made by this leadership? Is there, enough diversity of leadership so that folks are not just all saying yes to the same thing? There's so many ways that we can look at an enterprise and get a sense that they really understand what it is to make impact and have durable growth. Yeah.
That's such an excellent point, Noelle, and that is something that my family and I certainly look at as well when we are making our annual philanthropic contributions, as well as I see in the sector. I always applaud people who are doing good work in the world, who are doing what they can to make the world a better place. And also, as Blue mentioned, I do feel like we need to raise the bar with the expectations that we have as families of the philanthropies and of the leaders who are leading in these particular areas, so that we make sure that our capital and our philanthropic dollars are going towards not just the people on the ground, but creating infrastructure for people there to thrive, and making sure that all of those needs are addressed. So with that, I'm curious from each of you, what are some of the things that you've seen from your perspectives that are indicators, and you've mentioned some already, that are indicators of a philanthropy that's doing great work? Stephanie mentioned the impact reports, and also what are some of the things that are indicators that you share with families that indicate that their philanthropic dollars will be utilized for lasting sustainability and impact with the communities, and also with the community that's gathering around this philanthropy? Whoever feels called to go first.
Well, I could say I'm going to talk about real estate because that's the only thing I talk about. But look at the retention rates. Like if 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 you build something great and people are staying there, then you know you're making them feel safe. Because like, what do we need first? We need safety. And then what do we need? What do humans need second? Okay, we need safety, we need progress, we need health, we need water. So if you see people moving to where you are responsible and you are a steward of those real estate assets, then you know you're being a good steward to those who are using those assets. So your tenants. Um, it's, yeah, we were actually on Saturday night. We decided to discuss a very complicated problem, which is the food scarcity, shortage. And so we're talking about the four-phase plan um, to address this. And it, if it works, if what we do is effective, you'll see cities boom where we've built out these supply chains to connect the food, electricity, medical care in emerging markets. So just look at the population growth. Where the people go, you know you're doing a good job. If people are leaving, you're not doing something so good. You have to question what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, Marion, I want to add because I heard you use the term local impact, and I want to call out a couple of things. One is transparency. So from a nonprofit perspective, I think the way that we can show up is helping people to see, right, what the data is. Like how are we able to help? What are the numbers? So that's something we can work on. Sometimes it's challenging because we are on the front line and our job is to actually do the work. And we don't want to handcuff nonprofits so that they feel like, they're doing all the back end admin stuff, but they're not getting to the work. So we want to be, careful about that. But the other one that comes to mind is localization. So that is a topic that is has been discussed on the international side. It's, not not a charity coming in and, from the outside and saying, we think this is what you need, but also making sure that there's a seat at the table by the community and key constituents so that you actually have that conversation where you can understand what brings real impact and there's a voice, right, that's being shared from that perspective. And then also it helps with regards to lasting impact, which is what we're all trying to get to. So that in turn and you'll see that there's a lot of organizations that are elevating the conversation about localization. How we get there is another thing, but that has to be like a North Star.
Stephanie, do you want to share the story of the well that was dug, and 10 years later it was like rusted, and now they focus on
Yeah, absolutely.
sustainability?
Absolutely.
Please.
About 10 years ago, or maybe a little bit more than that, Rotary International went down a path to take a look at our grant making and the things that we do. And one of the problems we were having that people were doing things just because it made them feel good. They weren't necessarily checking with communities, is this what you really need? And they had no concept of sustainability. So, someone would put a well in a village in Africa. Great. It made all the people in the Rotary Club feel great. And then 10 years later, some Rotarian from that club or somebody's grandson would go to that village and there's the well, inoperable, the sign is rusted there and it's just not what we want. That's not what we're supposed to do. So we went through a process and now have more clarity about as we allocate funds to Rotary clubs and districts who are in the grants area, we want to make sure that they have built-in community assessment and we want to make sure that they have built-in sustainability. Will the results of that project continue once Rotary International is no longer there? That's a really important piece for us.
I think relevance is so critical. And Stephanie and Adi, I love that this is the example, the wells, right? And I think the world in terms of like philanthropy and impact, we're wealth managers at Morgan Stanley. So thankfully we work for a global firm that gives us not just one database, but like five in order to triangulate. I don't know what a triangle is if there's five databases, but there's a lot of data that we can
Pentagon.
use. Thank you. Pentagon. Yes. So our impact reporting allows us to really pull in the CSR data in order to assess, how are these companies actually behaving through the SDGs, through the data that comes from Equileap and MSCI ESG. So we do have that capacity to actually check the data. But where I think the data comes to life is in the engagement, right? So if we work with institutions that care about releasing all the dams, they're focused on rivers. What does it mean to be a river-friendly investor?
Mm-hmm.
That can't come just from the data. You have to be talking with these organizations, these enterprises, to understand what are the ways in which you are operating near and or serving communities that depend on river systems, right? So you have to get that much closer to the conversation, which thankfully, shareholder engagement allows for that level of dialogue, which is exciting. And that's on the public side, but now on the private side of investments, we work with a team that does private credit. And part of that team goes and actually requests that level of data to SDGs, to understanding, the way in which the employees are being treated, the material uses, getting all that data, because the private credit group is like, hey, we're offering the loan. This is what we're requiring in terms of the level of transparency for us to assess the risk, right? For us to originate this loan. And so I just love seeing that transparency and the desire for transparency isn't just in the public markets. We're seeing it now in private enterprise. It's allowing investors even that much more clarity into the way they can flow capital in a way that's going to just work with that end tip of the spear, philanthropic capital. So everything is moving in alignment so that at any point, anyone in the family, anyone in the institution can look to see the capital flow and say, yep, that is not in conflict. That is very much who we are. And it's all of us, not just our work. It's also our capital that's reflective of who we are too. So I think this is such the time for it. If like, can you imagine if all the families, all of the Rotaries, all of the institutions could say like, is everything in alignment? That would be so amazing. And so I hope that everyone who listens in, like, ask that of their advisors, ask that of everyone that touches their organization.
Absolutely. And it really is a fiduciary responsibility,
Yes.
as a next gen single family office and from a legacy of philanthropists. I'm always the one asking lots of questions and also making sure that what we are giving to and also what we are creating is in alignment with our family values as well as best practices. And so I love that prompt, Noelle, of asking everyone to double check, like, are your philanthropic dollars going towards what you want them to go towards? What could be better? Is there something that you care about that's not being represented? And also to that point, is there a place that does share about values aligned organizations? So how does a family even learn about these organizations? How, like, if I am a family and want to give, and also we're very well versed at this. So coming from I'm fourth gen, so we're very well versed and already a family of philanthropists. And also, if I'm starting out, or if I'm a next gen inheriting a lot of capital, like, how do I learn about these organizations? Where do I go? Is there a way that I can learn about my values aligned giving strategies, and does that exist in the space? And of course, obviously, go to Rotary International as one of the
Well,
leading ones, and
I was
also.
going to say, Maren, that this broadcast in and of itself is doing exactly that. It's educating people about the possibilities that exist. So part of it is no, not part of it, a huge piece of it is education. So thank you for doing this.
Oh, it's my honor and pleasure. It's because it is truly, this is one of the most important pieces that I see is missing in the space is the education around this. Of course, if people, thankfully, wealth advisors from wealth institutions, Morgan Stanley being the best. I love the work that you're doing around this because it's so important to hear about this from wealth managers and institutions and wealth institutions, and also for people that aren't with the major banks who do want to give but don't know where to go. Where can people learn about these organizations? And that's what I've seen personally as one of the gaps, is the education for people who are stewarding whatever types of wealth that they are, and really are looking for guiding lights in philanthropy. So I'm grateful that this is a resource, and that's also part of the intention of the Peace Train with the storytelling is to share the organizations that are doing the best work in the world for peace, prosperity, and purpose, so that people can give knowing that it's trusted, it's aligned, and also learn about the stories and celebrate all of the positive impact and the joy that's being felt on the ground with communities, because these organizations do put localization and community sustainability at the forefront of their missions and with everything that they're doing. So I'm very grateful for the organizations that are doing the best work in the world for peace, prosperity, and purpose, and that is why I created the Peace Train to bridge that gap with storytelling, and also I created it with a phenomenal team. So it's not just me. That was my personal why is just really quickly, I worked with as a filmmaker with grassroots nonprofits in almost 30 countries for several years, and I really saw that there was a gap between the connectivity and also the storytelling, so that people could even learn about all of these amazing organizations. So that's what I really seek to bridge, to build a rainbow bridge, actually, between all of the organizations and the rest of the world, with the meta narrative of the Peace Train. So I feel like this is, my piece of peace and what I can contribute to the space. And also I'm doing this because I'm so in awe and inspired of all of the organizations who are doing the best work in the world for peace, prosperity, and purpose. And Rotary certainly being the guiding light and North Star for all of us, because it's truly the most phenomenal peace, prosperity, and purposeful infrastructure in the world. So I'm just so grateful for all of your work with Rotary, and all of you for being a part of the organization. And I'm excited to be a Rotarian myself very soon. I'm very excited about it, and really it's about building community as well. And I love so much the community that's been built around Rotary, and it really shows the power of community to affect positive impact and make sure that it does become truly sustainable. And
Maren, yeah, the biggest asset we have in Rotary is our boots on the ground. It's our Rotarians. You may have noticed the other evening when I began speaking, I said, "Welcome to my family and friends of Rotary." I do consider 1.2 million people to be my family. It is just an amazing sense of belonging that happens in Rotary. So thank you for bringing it up.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for pioneering that, and for being such a shining example of what is possible with the power of community with philanthropy, because it is truly the gathering and also the infrastructure for community and for a global community of. I was so impressed to learn that everyone's volunteers. So it's everyone who is aligned with the mission of Rotary and believes in the work and is contributing their time, energy, and resources to this common goal, which I feel like is the most important thing that we can do right now in the world as philanthropists and as people who are in the world and doing what we can do to make the world a better place, at all stages of wealth. I feel like there's always things that each of us can do to give back, and to make the world a better place. So I'm grateful for Rotary for being a North Star and shining example of how we can do it the best. Thank you so much.
I wanted to just, Maren, you asked a question of where do people go to get these resources. I want to make sure we address that. And I'm sure Blue can step into as a philanthropic advisor. I'm a wealth advisor. You should be getting it from your advisors. So if you're not, then ask those hard questions, expect more of them, elevate the profession. And if they're saying, I don't know what you're asking for, then they haven't done the conscious wealth themselves. Yeah. So I just want to invite people to step into their leadership, women, next gen, everyone. If you're not getting the education and the resources that you deserve, then ask for it. And then, there are many resources beyond me. And I've got a lot of friends too doing this great work. I'm happy to share my network with others. But expect more of the people that this is our day job. Like being the resource for you is our day job. So please call on us. Blue.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. There is a consciousness, I think, within the advisory space about philanthropic advising and understanding that there is much even that advisors need to get under their belt. And out of that has come some really great learning spaces. Some of the big institutions have programs that allow family office leaders and advisors to come in and really dig up, deeper into what does that look like? What does that mean? An example would be Stanford University. They have an effective philanthropy program. A new one is designed by a group called Daylight. And what I love about that particular program, it's a 20-week educational program for advisors and family office leaders that is very contemporary. And so you have voices from different perspectives, leaders in the country and actually internationally who are giving content that is created for this curriculum. And at the end of that time, and it's a cohort kind of a setting, they walk away with a new designation. It's called IPA. And so you've got a couple of designations out there that help people sort of identify, okay, this advisor, has this language that I can ask them about. And like Noel said, you should ask. You should ask your advisor, if you need something, they can also use their resources and their peer group to then help you. So don't be afraid of that, like Noel said.
I love that. And I love the call to agency, Blue, because it really is truly up to all of us to ask these questions and make sure that they're answered in a way that that is not just satisfactory, but is leading in and the best advice. So thank you for that. I so appreciate that. And any other resources before we move on to we're all and also we have a few more minutes. Thank you to Anand, and also if anyone does need to go at the top of the hour, you're welcome to share a call to action and an inspirational call to action for conscious wealth, and I feel like that was a beautiful transition between that. Thank you, Blue.
I think the biggest thing is that if you are not in a philanthropic community such as Rotary or another one, in some countries they have other organizations as well, you should try going to 5 different meetings, because every club has a very unique culture, a very unique personality, and very unique type of group that they attract. So I would encourage you to take the next month to go to one Rotary meeting each week at a different club in the area. There are also e-clubs. And the thing that's most interesting, and Stephanie can cover this more, is they have interest-based clubs. So they have an e-club for those who are hyper-focused on women's health. They have an e-club for those who are hyper-focused on environmental investment opportunities. There's already infrastructure in place, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel, which makes it so that you can go so much further with every minute you invest because you're on a team of 1.2 million people. So you're not having to start everything from scratch. You can come in and the few hours you put in can get so much bigger results much faster.
And at a basic level, if you're just simply looking to learn more about Rotary and its mission and vision, you can visit its website at rotary.org. Very simple.
I
Thank
guess
you.
I'll do my main takeaway is peace begins with us, right? It begins with each one of us, and that call to agency. I would leave. I have so many women and next gen leaders who are still operating with the existing wealth structures and advisors who often look at them and say, no, that's not really a thing, or they give them doubts. And so I would offer, like, peace starts with you. Like, embrace your agency, ask those hard questions, keep doing, that, follow your intuition, right? The questions that need to be asked, and never let anyone make you feel like it's a dumb question. Ask all the questions. And so I just want to say thank you to this group. And that's what I would leave with. I think Blue's last.
It's hard to follow this group with that, but I will say I really like the conversation about conscious philanthropy. I do think that's the where we're trying to get to, and I do think it calls us to go deeper. I do think it, as Noel, you said, is to step into, right, our agency and to step into those questions, to not be afraid of that. And that's how we get to conscious philanthropy is where are we really trying to go? We're actually trying to solve problems in the world. How will we get there? It's by Addie saying, you don't just think of one thing, you think about it holistically. What does that look like? So yeah, so I love that conversation for tonight. Thank you.
I love that, Blue. Thank you. And Dr. Yurchik, do you have another call to action other than the wonderful resource that you shared about regarding Rotary International?
Well, in a general sense, and it has to do with conscious philanthropy as well as volunteerism in general. When I was young, I developed a mantra that I have lived by, and I continue to share it with people, and that is life is always more interesting on the other side of a yes. Say yes to things and then figure out how to do them. So if there's a call to be, philanthropic, do it and then figure it out. Too often, especially women, fall into this trap of, am I good enough? Do I have enough knowledge? Do I have enough money? Is it the right thing to? No, just say yes and then do it. If it's legal and if it's moral, say yes and do it.
I love that so much. And I'm so grateful that you all said yes to being here and that you said yes to the call to share your wisdom and truly the world's best leadership in the space of philanthropy. Thank you all so much for being here and for contributing and saying yes. And I feel like this is an epic collaboration between all of us. My call to action and prayer for this panel is that we all continue to support each other, collaborate, and that this panel is one of the many places where we will gather together and share our message of peace, prosperity, and purpose, and create the sustainable infrastructure for peace and thriving for all. Peace, prosperity, and thriving for all. And thank you all so much for being here. It's an honor and a joy always to be on the Davos Worldwide platform, and grateful to the entire team at Davos Worldwide for this opportunity to share, and also look forward to continuing this very important conversation and all of the calls to action. Thank you all so much, and I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. Thank you. Aloha.
Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
putting this
Thank you
together
for
and for
asking
all the
us. Yes.
logistics.
Thank you, Marion, and ladies. What a wonderful program. Stephanie, my father was invited as a young professor in the 50s to present at a local Rotary chapter in a small town of Carthage, Illinois. And
Okay.
from that point onwards, he became a Rotarian and lifelong Rotarian, as did my mother, who was also a professor. And several of my family who have always been there. My son himself has done the RYLA program, which is
Right.
the
Wonderful.
youth leadership program by Rotary. So for the young generations, this is a very interesting and very informative program for young leaders.
And what
So
about
keep in.
you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been through all of it. When I was young and I was dragged every Thursday night to a Rotary meeting, I didn't know what was happening, but it was a great learning platform as well because you had speakers, you had always had guest speakers that you learned from, and that was one of the other things that added to the mix. But coming to the other side of it, which is the conscious investment side of it, Morgan Stanley is doing a great job, as are organizations such as Whittier Trust or many others across the world. And I think that more and more asset managers, we had this time period where asset managers were saying ESG is just a nonsense statistic, and that anything related with conscious investing is all just in your mind. It has nothing to do with your portfolio. And I think that it's good to see that the change is happening and that people are starting to embrace this and starting to understand that maybe it's not a choice of saying I can either do well in my portfolio and I can make sure that there is stability in my portfolio and that wealth preservation is there and that the asset allocations are
Mhm.
according to whatever has been suggested. Instead, taking the appropriate action of saying, wait a minute, why are we asset allocated here? And especially within that allocation, why are we allocating within these equities or these instruments as opposed to the ones that I suggested? So, Noel, I completely agree with you, and you as well, Blue. That this needs to be a call to action for anybody that's investing, in looking at it from saying, look, maybe you don't qualify for Morgan Stanley's private wealth group, but even if you don't, even your local asset advisor should be able to adhere to what you want, not
Yeah.
what is printed on a piece of paper for you. And that's the difference, is asking that question. And so, wonderful panel, great energy. All of you have been significant contributors, and we look forward to working with you and supporting you in any way that we can. And thank you again. You have certainly made
Of
this a
course.
much more unique program. I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anand.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone. This is so amazing, and thank you all for being leading patrons of peace, prosperity, and thriving for all, and being such epic leaders in space. Thank you all. Aloha, everyone.
Aloha.
Okay.
And with that, we will conclude our programming for the day. We will continue programming tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Pacific US time, which is 4 p.m. Central European time. Looking forward to seeing you all there. Thank you again.